Hello, welcome again to Benchwarmers. Keeping up with the Coyotes this week at the University of South Dakota. Our Jay Elson will join in here in a moment with the latest on the basketball programs at USD, and we will touch on a little bit of football with a story on Coyote quarterback Aiden Bauman. The Coyotes claimed a couple of Summer League championships in the last year, and the USD volleyball team in particular has been on a run in recent seasons. The Coyotes won the Summer League regular season, going 16-2 in Summer League play, and then USD won the Summer League Tournament Championship for the third year in a row. Wins over Denver and Omaha in the Summer League Tournament, and then USD took Houston to 5 sets in the NCAA Tournament before Houston prevailed in that one 3-2. In February, the USD indoor track and field teams took team titles at the Summer League Championships. Marlene Mulla won the pole vault, and the Coyote women finished in the top 7 spots in that event as the USD women won their second straight indoor championship. The USD men earned their first indoor title since 2015. Jack Durst won the high jump at 6'11". Dylan Kotz won the 60 meters and the 200 meters on the final day of competition for the Coyote men. Well, looking around campus in Vermilion right now, you will find one of the finest track facilities in the country in the Lillibridge complex that was completed in 2016. The Sanford Coyote Sports Center opened shortly after that in 2017 and is home to USD volleyball and basketball. USD finished renovations on the Dakota Dome in 2020, and the Coyote football team continues to play there as they have since 1979. And the newest project on campus in Vermilion is the expansion of the Wellness Center to add swimming and diving spaces that will be open to the public and will be the home pool for the USD swim and dive teams.
It's already starting to help us, right, in the recruiting process, being able to bring recruits on campus and show them the dome pool and tell them you're never going to practice or compete in this facility, you're going to be in a new facility. That in itself has helped us on the recruiting end. And then there's the piece of being able to train the way we really want to train. You know, we've been restricted with space in the dome, and almost tripling our lane space. The move over here is going to be a game changer in what we're able to do and how we can do it and when we can do it. So I think it's going to make an immediate impact and hopefully can show some dividends pretty quick.
The competition pool and the leisure pool and the rest of the expanded spaces there are set to open in the fall of 2024. Coming up next, Jay Elson joins us to discuss USD women's basketball. Are the Coyotes back after a sub-500 season a year ago?
Benchwarmers on Midco Sports, presented by Avera Orthopedics, moving you forward.
Welcome back to Benchwarmers. Keeping up with the Coyotes this week at the University of South Dakota, and joined by Jay Elson, our Coyote correspondent. Talk some women's basketball first, and this is a program that took off under head coach Don Plitzowite. 3 straight NCAA tournament trips. She left, went to West Virginia. Now back at Minnesota. That's going to be fun to watch.
Oh, what a road for her, right? I mean, she goes Sweet 16, 1 year at West Virginia, and all of a sudden she's in the Big Ten at Minnesota, much closer to home, and also much closer to her recruiting circles. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. There's going to be an influx of talent, I think, no doubt, at that Minnesota program. But certainly been fun to watch her. Got West Virginia into the NCAA tournament as well before making that move to the Twin Cities. So she's not wasting any time. She's still having a lot of success.
Go for a program that's been a little down. We'll see what she can do there. But Kayla Karius takes over at USD. First season, 14-16. They go 10-8 in the Summit League, and they just got pounded right away by injuries for one thing.
Yeah, to be honest, if you look at that record, and certainly by comparison, it's a down year, right? Because of all the success that they had. But given the shoes she had to fill and the holes she had to fill on that roster, remember they lost their top 5 players from the team that went to the Sweet 16 a couple of years ago. And so for her to get them above 500 in the Summit League, I think was somewhat of an accomplishment just on talent alone. But then you factor in that part about the injuries, and it's all the more impressive because she literally was working with 8 healthy bodies for most of last season. They had 5 ACL injuries, either a carryover or that happened after she took over the program last year. And so that's a lot for any coach to handle, and I thought she did as well as anyone could have ever expected with that challenge.
Yeah, Chloe Lamb and Hannah Shervin take off. You're probably going to maybe take a little bit of a drop. One player that was fantastic, Grace Larkins, had a really, really good year.
Yeah, clearly one of the top players in the Summit League. Grace Larkins is, started all 30 games last year, averaged 17, 8, 4.5. She's the first player in Summit League history ever to be in the top 5 in points, rebounds, assists, and steals at the end of the season. So that tells you what kind of all-around talent she is. That being said, she was certainly the top gun, and so one of the goals of this offseason certainly has been to build around her, and I think that's something they certainly have accomplished.
I don't know if she ever got a triple-double, but she was always
close
on the verge, like
times.
every game. All right, Carly Duffney was another young player that had a good season.
Yeah, and one that I don't think most would have seen coming. Carly Duffney redshirted her first year and started slow. Last year she was really up and down, which is not uncommon for players seeing their first collegiate action, but boy, she flipped a switch right around the start of conference play and became a completely different player for that team, and became really, that second option to Grace Larkins in the offense, and became a very dynamic 4-5 type player for this USD team. And so if she continues to improve and build on what she did last year, they might have found something really special in her.
They had another player, Madison Grange, who started the season, only played 5 games before injury.
Yeah.
It was one of the injuries you're talking about.
And unfortunately, she was one that they brought in specifically for her leadership and her veteran presence. And Madison had started to play very, very well right before the injury. She went down in the game at St. Louis toward the tail end of the non-conference, or early in the non-conference season, rather. And so that was really unfortunate, because she's also a really good perimeter shooter, and that's something they struggled with from the point that she went down through the rest of the season. They just were really inconsistent. Even though the numbers looked pretty good, boy, she would have really helped that team going down, from obviously from the experience standpoint, but also just from efficiency standpoint on the perimeter. She was a big loss for them, certainly.
A couple of new players coming in. Transfer from Saginaw Valley State, Tori DePerry, and then Kendall Holmes, a transfer from DePaul.
And both pieces that should help them immediately. Both are filling needs. DePerry, that 4 spot that they really didn't have, that's where she's going to slot in right away. And then Kendall Holmes is another talented young player, may be able to take some of that pressure off from Grace Larkins on the offensive end of the floor in particular, another really good shooter. So I think if you pair her with Madison Grange, that's a nice 1-2 punch on the perimeter. And then we saw Duffney could shoot it okay from outside. Larkins improved dramatically shooting outside last year, even though her numbers, I'm sure she would like to see that creep up a little bit closer to 40%. She did get better in her sophomore year in that way. So this is a team that just on paper already looks a lot more dangerous than they did a year ago.
Yeah, Morgan Hansen, Walker Demers, another young player that's going to be back. Avery Broughton. Of course, Stickney comes in. Mike Jewett will be the assistant coach, one of the assistant coaches this year, after being at South Dakota State for a lot of years and then being out of coaching. Comes back now with the USD.
Yeah, that's going to be something a lot of people are going to have to get used to, is not only seeing Jewett back in the game, but Jewett in red on that red bench there in Vermillion for those games against South Dakota State. But certainly a great addition to the staff in terms of experience. This guy knows his way around the Summit League. He knows how to be successful in this conference. And so it's a win-win all the way around for Kayla Karius and that program to get a guy like Mike Jewett in there to help run the ship.
It'll be fun to watch with the USD women. When we come back, how about some USD men's hoops? The transfer portal took a bite, but lots of moving pieces on the board for the Yotes. We'll talk about that coming up next. Welcome back to Benchwarmers. The focus on the Coyotes this week at the University of South Dakota. Back with Jay Elson. Let's talk some men's basketball. And Eric Peterson takes over his first season with the Yotes. They go 12-19, 7-11 in Summit League play. And it was an up and down season. Lost 6 of the last 7. But, they get to the Summit League tournament, the game against NDSU, and the block on Damani Hayes is still controversial. But just the last season, what do you think?
Yeah, up and down is a good way to put it. I think there were a lot of extenuating circumstances, both with Peterson himself in the fall at his home, and that cost him 7 games. And so they really felt a little disjointed even after he came back. And I think that's it stands to reason, given all the inconsistency with the voices that guys are hearing and things like that. They had some off-court stuff that involving one of their players, too, that certainly didn't help from a personnel standpoint because they were operating with one fewer guys. But, overall, it didn't click the way I think he anticipated it to with all the returners.
Because there was a lot there.
Yeah.
Yes, there was.
Cruz, Perro, Hunt, A.J. Plitzowite, and that's a unique circumstance itself because AJ's coming off a major injury. Nobody knew what they were going to get out of him last year, and I think the fact he was able to give them double digits in points says a lot about his ability. But that being said, I think anybody that watched him could understand this is not the 2 years ago version of AJ Plitzowite. He lacked explosion that he had before the injury. Lateral quickness wasn't quite there. So some things like that. And then, Tasos Kamateros, he certainly contributed a lot as expected, but overall it just didn't, the cohesion that they needed, top to bottom, just wasn't there.
Plitzowite is in the portal, but nowhere yet, right?
Nowhere yet.
Tasos Kamateros transferred to
Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Monty Hayes graduated. Mason Archambault graduated as well. Cruz Perro Hunt had another year, but...
Yeah, and he actually was all set to go overseas and play overseas, and then last minute, right before the portal closed, he went in the portal, but as far as I know at this moment, does not have a place. So I don't exactly know what's going on with Cruz, but his AJ probably has a little something to do with where things stand right now.
All right, portal goes both ways. They got 5 transfers I counted that are coming in. Who are
lots of guys, and they went after a couple of key components here. They wanted size. They were one of the smallest teams in all of Division I last year, and they wanted more athleticism. Not that the guys that were there or were coming back weren't athletic, but they wanted that extra little bit that they really kind of lacked as a team last year. And so they got a couple of big guys, Lahat Chum from UCF by way of Utah. They bring in Mayum Boom from Emporia State, a D2 transfer. And then Boston Holt, really talented guard out of Utah that Peterson had connections with. Caleb Stewart, a former all-freshman team kid out of Conference USA at Louisiana Tech, is coming in. Multiple years for him. They've got a Chipola College transfer that's going to help him at the point guard spot as well. And then a couple of really talented freshmen. Locally, a lot of the eyes go to Isaac Bruns, his brother Paul, of course, on the team last year after transferring down from North Dakota. He was up and down last year, but has wanted to play with his brother, and so now we're going to finally see that kind of come to fruition. Isaac is a super talented kid. And then Shea Eberline is a guard out of Texas. Look out for this kid. I think he's got a chance to be special.
Different, to say the least.
Different, big time.
For the Coyote men this year. They got the Summer League Big Sky Challenge. USD's men will play Eastern Washington in Vermilion and then go to Montana as part of that Summit League.
Yeah, that's a tough draw. That's a tough draw there.
That'll be good. All right. When we come back, we will take a look at USD Coyote football. A look at one of the top difference makers for the Coyotes last year, quarterback Aiden Bauman. Well, welcome back to Benchwarmers. We will have college football preview shows coming up here at the end of July and into August. We'll touch on South Dakota State and North Dakota and the University of South Dakota. And we've got a little time here to talk about the Coyotes with Jay. And here's the biggest open-ended question of all time. What can you say about this team right now and kind of where they're at?
Well, unfortunately, the bar got lowered last year. Coming off the playoff season, I think there was heightened expectations coming into last year, and obviously it wasn't the kind of year anybody down there wanted to have. And I think the schedule had an awful lot to do with it. They were not exactly set up for success with the way they started out of the gate, playing 3 of the top 5 teams in the country in the first 5 weeks of the season. So they had some things working against them that way, but I don't think they responded the way that anybody thought that they would either to all that. They obviously had some coaching turnover in the middle of the season. They had a quarterback change in the middle of the season, some key injuries that everybody deals with, but certainly didn't help their cause. So I think the only way to go is up from this point forward. And so from that respect, I think people can expect better things. It just remains to be seen how much better, and that's what they're working toward right now.
Always dangerous, though. I mean, any game, USD could beat anybody at any time, but 2 wins in the Valley last year. They had a couple of really close losses on the road in the Valley, and then got beat up by Northern Iowa there at the end of the season. But just the consistency is what you're talking about.
Yeah, Illinois State, they lose a 2-point game on the road. They go up and they fight North Dakota, a playoff team, hard on the road in Grand Forks, a place they've not had a lot of success. And so they showed flashes here and there. Just consistency was one of their biggest enemies, because it was either up or it was way, way down. And that's just something you can't afford to have, especially once you get into the Valley schedule. So going forward into this year, certainly something they're going to look to level off a little bit, and certainly hope to be on the higher end a lot more often than not. But again, I think as you look at their schedule coming into this year, much more favorable, and I think that will serve them well, certainly right out of the gate.
You touched on the quarterback change they made. It turned out to be a good move, apparently, but his name is very familiar with South Dakota and people in Minnesota, but looks like he's going to be the guy at least for the next couple.
Yeah, Aiden Bauman, and he came in. I thought he handled himself very well, established himself as a leader of that offense. I think you saw guys rally around them, and while the offense maybe never reached its highest potential last year, I think Aiden did help them get a lot closer than they were early in the season. And so I think looking forward, I think one of the things he worked on, and as I spoke with him about, was leadership. He wants to be the guy, and he wants to be looked to as the guy. And that being said, you're working with a new offensive coordinator and things, so he's had some turnover to deal with himself, or some change, and getting used to a new system and some new language and all that goes with that, all that fun stuff. But certainly Aiden Bauman is a guy that they're looking to build around. They've added some depth around him in the quarterback room as well to try and help with that. And increase the competition level in practice a little bit too. So, there's a lot that they've done, and a lot of investment has been made in that offense. And so the hope certainly is that things get better and get better quickly.
All right, a little bit more here on the Coyote quarterback.
Aiden Bauman took the reins of the South Dakota offense last October, throwing for just under 900 yards and 8 touchdowns over the Coyotes' final 5 games.
I feel like I got to, prove myself as a player, and I feel like, guys around me, we kind of rallied around it, and I feel like I'm going to try and, use that momentum from, getting experience last year and use that to build myself as a leader.
That process is ongoing, but one guy that's already taken notice of Bauman's progress is the Coyotes' new offensive coordinator, Josh Davis.
Aiden's a joy to coach because he's completely bought in to this sport, to this team, to this university. So you don't have to bring him along in that regard. He's there.
One of Davis's big goals this spring has been to get his quarterback up to speed with his system. Bauman's toolkit has helped build that foundation a little quicker.
He understands X's and O's at a high level. He understands our RPOs and where our eyes need to be. He's been very sound with his read progressions. We've turned the ball over a couple times due to a quality defense across from us and things we can do a little bit better, but he responds really well. He understands that the next play is the most important play. He's great with his teammates, which is obviously really important, so really pleased with where Aiden's at.
He's a thinker. He processes stuff really, really well. He's got a great arm, obviously, as people saw a year ago, and I think right now is feeling more and more comfortable every day with the new system, and we're trying to build that system around the things that he does well.
For now, Bauman is keeping that spring in his step while staying appropriately focused on the things he can control.
Mobility has always been a big thing for me to keep working on, not even speed-wise, but just footwork and, being able to maneuver the pocket, get out of the pocket, make throws on the run, stuff like that. And again, like I said, just being a leader. As a quarterback, I think that's the biggest role that you have to play, is being a leader on the team. And that doesn't even need to be vocal sometimes. Sometimes it needs to be, with your actions, what you do on and off the field. But both those two things are things that I've worked to grow on.
What I've seen improvement in already is his foot speed, his pocket posture, and his delivery. The ball is coming out on time consistently. When his first and second read get taken away, he's really quick to transition his eyes and his body into proper alignment to deliver a ball to his third and fourth read, which oftentimes can be on the backside of where we started. He's really polished in those areas. We have a really good football team. We're in the works of putting together a championship level offense. I'm really happy we have Aiden Bauman.
All right, he shows a ton of promise, and USD, as you said, will open the season at Missouri coming up on September 2nd. They will host St. Thomas in the game after that. That's going to be
well, and Glenn Caruso, former offensive coordinator at USD, so that's interesting. But that goes back to the kind of the schedule thing I alluded, the relief that they have in that way, and that's not taking anything away from St. Thomas, who won a Pioneer League title last year, but opening at Mizzou, of course, that is what it is, but then home to St. Thomas, home to Lamar, far cry from Montana, South Dakota State, and North Dakota State, bam, 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 over the first 5 weeks. No UNI, no Illinois State, no Missouri State for them this year. Indiana State, Western Illinois, they're the only team in the league that didn't play either one of those teams last year. They do get to face both this year. So much, much easier road, no question, but you still, as we know, in the Valley, you got to play, and you got to make it happen. All
right, much more USD football coming up in a couple of weeks here with Jay here on Benchwarmers. Appreciate it, man. Thanks.
You bet.
All right, when we come back, Summit League baseball powerhouse Oral Roberts has been making a splash at the College World Series in Omaha. A little insight from SDSU head coach Rob Bishop. When we come back, he knew that ORU had a chance to get this far.
Thanks for watching Benchwarmers, presented by Avera Orthopedics, moving you forward.
The Oral Roberts baseball team is repping the Summit League at the College World Series this year, and the Eagles may be eliminated by the time this show airs, but what a run it has been for ORU. Wins over Oklahoma State and Washington and Dallas Baptist in the regional, and then they beat Oregon 2 out of 3 in the super regional to be one of the only 8 teams in the country left standing, and then ORU beat TCU in the first game of the College World Series last week. I talked to SDSU head coach Rob Bishop right before the Summit League tournament about a month ago, asked him about ORU, and he knew they had a chance to be this good.
This is the best baseball team they've had in my time, or in Coach Grunski's time here in the last 15 years. So they've been a benefactor of the portal, I would say. I mean, I think they have 18 or 19 seniors this year, and a lot of those guys are grad students. And they, you know, they're just, from a weather, from a facility standpoint, they're just in a little different category than the rest of the league. They're guys that were hitting 2, 3, 4 last year are hitting 7, 8, 9 for them this year, and their rotation's really good, and they have, in my opinion, the best reliever in the league in Cade Denton. I mean, he's probably going to be a top 3 rounder. He's really good.
ORU set a school record with win number 52 when they beat TCU in that World Series opener. Congrats to the Golden Eagles on a historic run this season and repping the Summit League in doing so. We will turn our attention to high school sports next week. Jody Norstedt and his band of jolly journalists in North Dakota will take over next Wednesday night here on Benchwarmers.